Hey everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their communities that educate, entertain, and inspire all things Florida real estate on how you can take your company to the next level. On my show today, I have on Jeff Rhodes from Marketing by Hand, who is a master guru at making those letters and mailers that go to sellers, that go to different people in the real estate world, stick and stand out. He is a master when it comes to this stuff. He's got different templates, he's got different strategies, but all in all, Jeff is the guy when you're thinking of a company that can really help take your company to the next level when doing mailers. And what better yet to have a company to take that off your plate, something that you use on a daily basis when you're trying to target the sellers or the properties. It's a lifesaver and a money saver in time and effort when you can use somebody like Jeff with all of these mailing services. And on the show today, Jeff is going to talk about the psychology of how people treat mail. That is going to be really in depth, because if there's anybody that understands that, it's Jeff, because he tweaks his practices based upon the psychology of how people think when they look at the initial mail, when they open it, how they read it, what they're looking for. And he's going to talk about database marketing 101, the important fundamentals of measuring your marketing success, funnels, and cost per leads, and allowable marketing per sale. And he's going to talk about how to orchestrate such a mailing campaign yourself. Because at the end of the day, yes, while everybody could do their own mail, it really helps to hear from an expert in the industry on how you can do this stuff. So without further ado, I have on Jeff on the show. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you so much, Al. Good to see you again, my friend.
It is. It has been a while since we saw each other. The last time I saw you, we were at the boot camp together, the Probate boot camp,
Yes.
which we will have to talk about probate, obviously, for sure on the show. But the last time I saw you there, we were all up front with Angela and you, and we were telling people all about the different things in the probate world with mailers. And it's just amazing to have you back, because watching you up there talk about the differences in how people have these mailer systems and what makes a difference, the mistakes, the successes, is so important. And since the boot camp, which was crazy, it was in February, right? Beginning of February, and then COVID hits in March and can't do anything. What timing was that? Like,
little did we know,
we did it. And it
Yeah.
almost, you know what? The boot camp was almost March 17th. No, it was close to being that weekend, but imagine had we done it then, no, we would have never done it, and we did it in early time. So now that we get to do this, because this is the normal now, this is the new
That's
normal,
right.
being
We're
on
all-
Zoom. Yeah,
That's
connecting.
right. Here we are. This is my Zoom call. My
Exactly.
moment has arrived.
We don't have to be in person for this. So that's what's great. Until I get my studio, which I will definitely let you know when it's ready, because I have to have you be in the studio in person when we do our whole camera session. But Jeff, for those of you that don't know you, and we could go on back and forth, please tell everybody, like, who's Jeff Rhodes? How did you get to where you are today with all of the mailing and the marketing to real estate? And I'm sure you do the other services to other companies, but how did you even get into this whole niche of marketing and real estate stuff?
Most everything that I've learned from my clients. I do have, I have an economics education and a minor in business, but really, like anything, it's real world experience over the last 20 years being in the marketing and advertising space. I've worked in business to business, for business to business lead generation and lead development firms. I worked for a couple in the Austin, Texas area about 10 or 15 years ago. And that is where the notion that when integrated well, a direct mail campaign works very well if it's integrated well with some other forms of outreach. Just how powerful that can be to reach decision makers that are not responding to other means. And so the story there is that I was working at a marketing firm called Invenio, and we had a particular client that had a list of business to business decision makers at these high tech companies, and they could not get them on the phone. They could not get them to respond to any type of invites to events or anything that was going on back then. And but they had at least a postal mailing list. And so we advised them to try a coffee card campaign, which was these little $5 Starbucks coffee cards and a handwritten note that said, "Dear Sally," for example, "please have a cup of Joe on me and call me. We solved this common problem we suspect you might have." And so that's kind of the framework of any effective marketing communication, is to say the right thing to the right person at the right time and compel them into action. I'm a big believer in fundamentals and not so much gimmicks. So there's plenty of gimmicks out there, and sometimes they work for a while and then they tend to burn out. But those fundamentals of a list, a good message, and an offer are necessary to have any type of success in any marketing campaign, period, much less just direct mail. And so, we could see that a hand addressed envelope was instrumental in getting past the gatekeepers, okay? And the importance of first class, of a stamp, of a manually produced marketing piece can get past gatekeepers. It was wildly effective. And so back in 2011, I began to brainstorm on how can this be applied in the consumer space. And so that was the genesis of marketing by hand. Back in 2011, we had our first real estate agent as a client. And so since then, we've had hundreds and hundreds of clients in the professional services spaces. These are real estate agents, they're insurance agents. One of my favorites is actually a lactation consultant down in Austin, Texas.
See, it's not just real estate.
It's any time that someone has a service or a profession and a database can be made available where we can apply these database marketing tactics, and they want to stand out. They want to be opened. They don't want to go into trash. They want to be read. They want to be impressive in their outreach. So a lot of things come to mind, as a child of the 70s and 80s, the commercials, E.F. Hutton, we do business the old fashioned way, we earn it. There are some the old-fashioned things come to mind, when we talk about a handwritten letter, something that my grandmother would send me, and I would write to her.
And that goes to a lot of psychology too, right? There's a psychology to seeing somebody write on a card, handwritten in ink, meaning that person who wrote it took the time to write it and has a bit more meaning, that they really are trying to connect with you. Am I right?
Absolutely.
There's a connection development when it comes to handwriting.
It's almost an unspoken token of respect, and anyone that has ever written a letter knows the effort that it took to write it. And so what we find, whenever I'm asked, how will I know that if we go full handwritten on this card that it'll get read? I always ask, when was the last time you stopped reading a handwritten note? No one can really answer that because we finish them. We even finish a breakup letter in high school. We read every word, as painful as it may be. So handwritten words, a pen to paper, get read to completion. Now, marketers love that, because if we can drill down to what a cost is and figure out deliverability, they know the cost of their message being delivered, read, and understood. And so that's where we're coming in, is winning at the mailbox, okay? Beating out competitors that are sending just typical, postcards or machined content, it looks like junk mail, or using metered or bulk postage, we're winning at the mailbox. And once opened, we're winning in message delivery because we're not simply being scanned and tossed, right? If a machine or robot or computer writes this, it will be scanned and then tossed. But if a human being writes every one of those words, they will be read to completion.
So,
right?
question for you, Jeff, about
Yes.
this is, well, my whole take about it is that it can apply to any industry or service, really. This whole function of the fundamentals, a good message, winning at the mailbox, doesn't just apply to real estate, but can apply to any kind of service industry that you're trying to reach to and tackle, or person, because you really, like you said, it really comes down to the basics. If you have all of those things in play, that is the service not only that you provide for clients, but that is the thing that succeeds at winning in the mailbox, is applying all of these steps, hand addressed, first class, these little nuances that a lot of people don't think about, right? And in our world, in Florida and the whole real estate world, you have so many investors or so many realtors or so many real estate professionals that not only do they do their whole cold calling, they do their message campaigns, but they do love the mailing. And so when you talk about a good message, I get asked that all the time, right? At the boot camp,
Yeah.
I think somebody had asked that about like, what's the standard letter template? What's
Right.
the letter thing? And then you and I have talked at like nauseum
Mhm.
about that too, because it's like, really, how much do you say? How much do you really have to say? You just need something simple and a good message. But in your words, in your world, in the Jeff mind, how do you make that good message simple, and what is that good message?
Right. So, in talking about messaging, we want to presume that an opportunity exists, or in the mind of the recipient, of the audience, a problem exists that needs to be solved, right? And so that's where list is very important, and the compiling of this data. I remember you speaking about how to do this, how to visit these websites and compile a list of potential decision makers on a property that may be potentially, going to probate, or something needs to be done with this thing. In messaging, I see clients take one of two avenues. One is either to be very, very personal. And so that would be an approach that would say, Dear John, or Dear Al, I'm interested in purchasing your property at 1212 Maplewood Avenue. If you are interested in selling or would like to know the value of that property today, please call me. And it tends to be a personal email, Nicoletti@gmail.com, for example. It may go to a cell phone with a good voice message, voice greeting on it, but it's not a corporate approach. Okay. So I see a lot of clients take that approach. It's just like that they want to portray that they have just driven by and seen this property and they're interested in making a purchase offer on it. Or by whatever means that it came to them, that there might exist an opportunity here, but it's very informal. Other clients will take more of a business approach. And so they'll have their business name, Al buys houses, Jacksonville.com, a phone tree that may, press 1 for this or 2 for that. And they'll have, their messaging will be slightly different. In either instance, you've got to look at the audience, right? So there's two types of people. Those that say, I do not really want to deal with We Buy Ugly Houses. Okay, it's a big corporation. I hear that they lowball and all this stuff. So over here's a guy, claims to be an investor, interested in the house. We'll try him. But it's simple, concise messaging. People's attention spans are not that great. So and much of this requires repeat mail. Okay, every month, every 2 months, a new letter goes out if there's been no response. And so I tend to advise, vary it. So if your first message is short, Your second message, it can be longer. It can be talking about what we mean by as is, what we mean by a quick close. Let me expand upon what I meant when I said can help pay for your probate. So that can be more of a business letter, you know. And so always vary your approach, because you never know exactly how someone's going to respond. Some people like short and sweet and personal. Some people may think, oh, I may go with a more reputable name, and these people have more of a business presence, and so I'm going to go that direction. Hit them from both angles. One of my more successful clients will his first letter is handwritten. Anything else after that first letter is not, but the letter itself inside the envelope is handwritten, and it comes out written from the standpoint of his wife, saying, my husband so and so are interested in purchasing your property at this address, and so will you please give us a call? Signed, John and Sally. Later down in the sequence, a letter comes out from John at, John Buys Homes, Houston, and it's far more expansive in its detail, okay, about the process. It even tells a little bit of a story about how he at one time was faced with this and delayed and getting the information that he needed to make a decision. So with multiple attempts, you can do multiple things and cover all your bases. So that's what I see most successfully.
Yeah, and that's interesting what you're talking about, different audiences and the different style of what you can do, making it that simple, or actually elaborating on how you can help and what services you provide, instead of it just being a little hook and then you have to call and find out or get back to people. There's different messages and there's different combinations, right? So you
Yes.
can have, you could do the simple one, and then you can go, I didn't explain it all the way, and then you can explain it and maybe they feel more clear about it.
Yes.
Instead of just dropping the bomb, the boom on them about, we could do all this and everything here, and then second letter, call me, so
Right.
there's different strategies. I don't know, I see it that way, right? There's
Sure.
different strategies to this, and people have different stuff. Talk to us a little bit about like the envelope too. I've heard so many people have different strategies with the face of the envelope. I've heard people see they do it in pink, they could do it in green, they could do it in beige, they could do it in any color, or they could do the outside as print, or the outside as machine handwritten, or the outside as handwritten, blue ink, red ink, green ink,
Yeah.
and then the stamps, maybe they'll do a mockingbird, they'll do I'm just thinking of so many different things. They'll do the fireworks stamps,
Mm-hmm.
but also some of the other tips and tactics that we've discussed many times about, trying to get a hold of somebody like on the front. Like, is it time sensitive? Is
Yeah.
it, talk to us about those tips and tricks about the outside of the envelope, because that's really the first thing that
Mm-hmm.
they're seeing when they get it, and to decide, is this trash or not. And I know
Right.
you have examples of all of this
Yeah.
stuff that you have handy, which will be so helpful for everybody.
Yeah. And to what degree it'll show up on webcam, I don't know. But let's talk just briefly, and I'll get into exactly what you were asking there about how people psychologically handle their mail, right? So with respect to probates and probate families, okay, at that property address, if it's been vacant, if the passing of this person at that property address leaves a vacant mailbox, most often the family will submit a forwarding mail request to the post office, okay, to go to wherever they may be. It could go to the personal representative. It could go, it's not going to go and sit there for 6 months to a year inside of a mailbox. And if the family does not do that, they will deliver for a while until the mail carrier reports back to the post office, hey, this is just going to sit there and compost. And so something needs to be done, and they'll declare it as vacant. So that gets into, and we'll talk about it a little bit deeper later, but the importance of first class versus standard class or bulk. You need this to forward. Anything you send in the probate world needs to go first class to follow the forwarding rules. Also, the return mail rules, so that you can remove that address if it comes back yellow stickered as undeliverable. You can remove it, skip trace it, do something else to find, appropriate contacts and valid mailing addresses. So that's the importance of first class. Price difference, they just raised the prices or are going to on the 27th. Not on first class this year. Still 55 cents for a first class forever stamp, which is what we recommend. But it's simply not worth it to save 20 cents, if it's not going to forward. So,
Right.
or come back to you and help your database keep clean, or be delayed by 2 or 3 weeks. It's just, we want to stick with first class. Use small marketing tools for small marketing list, right? If we're use the appropriate tool, we don't want to hit it with a sledgehammer, right? This is a finesse move that we're talking about. Everyone can relate to what I'm about to do. Were you about going to say something?
Well, you brought up a great point, and I think we're going to talk about this. There's no doubt we have to. I know there was an investor in Tampa that had asked me about this when I did a speaking thing recently about they did a whole mailing campaign themselves, right? They think they said they did 2,000 or something, and they said they got like 400 back. And when they got it back, it had that sticker from USPS with different codes or combinations. Like one of it said undeliverable, the next one said not able to forward, the other one said vacant. And I thought to myself, boy, Jeff would be the perfect person to speak to about that, because so many of the investors and realtors that do that kind of stuff, they get it back and then they don't know what to do next. They don't know their next spot. And people like Tyler Austin in Pensacola, and he's in Destin and Okaloosa, but he's in the Panhandle area. His whole system is like different buckets and different layers. And it's like, to him, that stuff's gold, right? Like if you're getting mailers back that still have the sticker on it and you don't know what to do with it, that means that still it's possible nobody's been able to touch those yet. Those people haven't even been contacted yet. So when you see that, or when these people get that back, what is your best advice on what's the next step to do with that mailer?
You want to skip trace it. You want to do your due diligence, and I am not the expert at deciphering those codes. I've talked to the postal service about it and gotten a couple different answers. When it comes back, it means that a forwarding rule has not been submitted by the family. It did not forward. An address was not given. And for whatever reason, they believe that that is vacant, and they're not going to put it into a vacant mailbox. Okay. So they'll call it non-deliverable or vacant. Sometimes you want to look at all your non-deliverables and make sure that it's an accurate address. Okay. If you send one to 331 2nd Street and you meant 334 because 331 does not exist, that may come back to you. So you want to eyeball your non-deliverables. We know what vacant means. Vacant means that the local mail carrier knows that address is deceased, that it's empty, that they've stopped delivery to that box. Okay. But that is a great question. I do not have the full answer as to what you can do investigatively to the yellow stickered mail. Take a look at it. There are ways to research that family, as you illustrated at the Probate 101 conference that you did. There's ways to investigate and find other key decision makers within that family. So I would at least put in your due diligence into that if it comes back yellowed sticker, but do not send any more mail to that address. It will come back yellow stickered again.
Yeah, it's a common question I get at the seminars and the boot camps about what do you do then? And you're right. The only thing you can really do is either skip trace, get a genealogist, get somebody if it's a probate, but the only thing you can do are take those additional steps. Otherwise, there's really, maybe it's just there's no way to get a hold of them. Just do your independent searching.
20% to me feels a little high. I see more often between 10 and 15 on returns on your typical probate list. It gets worse the older that that list becomes, particularly on property addresses. That's why it's important to have the PR contact, personal representative, as executor, whoever that is, that says, here's the valid person. Now they may be in North Dakota, but that tends to be far more deliverable than a property address at a deceased person's home, you know.
You'd be so surprised. I mean, if you tackle these tax delinquents or you tackle the probates, there could be so many that come back, maybe because the house is just vacant. And I think the investor had talked to me about how there's codes at the USPS office that delineate what that means. And I don't know, maybe they talk about the next steps that you can do, but you're onto something about the next step in your business. You have a new, Jeff's going to have a new skip tracing program soon.
I don't think so. But your local postmaster can, if you take a stack of yellow stickered mail up there, can answer that more fully than I did. That's their business. But going back to what we all do, and we can all relate to this. We all have a mailbox, right? We're checking our mail, whether it's our own or checking it for a family member. We grab a stack. Now, there's kind of some training that's involved to mail carriers on how to put this in there, because if they're not careful, your electric bill will get slipped into your pizza coupons, right? So typically, if you look at it, your first class with stamps, your first class, or in this case, this comes from the state. It's my vehicle registration, okay, will be on top of this stack. I don't know if you ever thought about that. Go look at it. If it's not happening that way, your carrier needs to be retrained. But important stuff, first class, gets put on top. Pizza coupons are down below, okay? And so here's, Texas agriculture, but inside of it was junk mail, okay? Geico was inside of it, right? It's bulk.
Right,
it's bulk.
right.
All right.
Right.
Pre-sorted. This is an example of a bulk stamp. Note, and how do I know that? It's not been canceled. There's no postmark. There's no postmark. All right.
So if there's no postmark or anything like that, that means it's something other than first class mail.
It's something other than first class, typically. Now there's examples. This is first class, and it does have a postmark. All right. It has a postmark. There's my postmark. This was metered. This is called metered mail. Your postmarks look like this. Okay?
Right.
Postmark will tell you that where it entered the mail system, usually the main hub nearby, and it's canceling out the stamp. Okay? And that's when someone goes, typically, there's always outliers, right? You can divide people kind of sort of into three categories, okay? Most people grab this and do exactly what I'm doing. They look, nope, not relevant. That looks important, okay? Oh, what is that, a sympathy card? What is that, another sympathy card? Or is that a birthday? What is that? Oh, junk, advertising. It's from my bank. That's important. I recognize the sender. What's this? No, not in the market. Not in the market. More junk, more Geico. No, I'm already happy with my insurance. Okay. We go through a process of determining what are we going to open or not. Most people go through a process of determining what are they going to open or not. Now,
and that's what it is.
And that is the game that we're playing with people's attention. And that's why there's some best practices on these envelopes, such as a 2-line return address. I don't want them to know I'm a stranger. A handwritten envelope, a first class stamp. Okay, this could be a birthday card, a thank you note, an invitation, a sympathy card. And so it's clearly someone has taken the time. The more imperfect this is, the better, the more authentic it becomes. We want to win that. That's the first hurdle. is get through mail sorting. That we
Yeah,
all do.
I never thought about it that way with the first class mail being on top. I remember you talked about that at the boot camp about the mail sorting, but now it's clear in my mind about that is how the mail carrier is going to handle the mail. The important stuff is on top, and so that is going to come out at first.
Right.
But let me ask you this, Jeff. How do you differentiate not just about what you do with all the handwriting stuff, but I guess a tip and trick for the people out there, the real estate professionals, about how to really maybe get to the top of the pile, but also stand out in that first class pile? Because there could be 10 first class
Yes.
envelopes.
Yes.
And so then how do you stand out at that point if they're all important or they're all looking to buy the house?
Well, luckily for your investors that are savvy, that are doing this, the best way that you can stand out is send a piece that's going to be opened, and your competitors are not all sending first class hand addressed envelopes. Okay. That's puts you at we're 90% of the way there. There are things that we can do, and you and I have talked about it. You can handwrite on that envelope in the bottom left corner, important. John, please open. You can do little things like that. John, please let me, little tiny messages on the envelope in the bottom corner in case one of your competitors is doing this, right? You can try to give yourself another edge. Open rates on these are, back when we were doing surveys many years ago, and it wasn't the most professionally done because we only surveyed those that answered the phone. But
right.
But what we found is that 19 out of 20 of these are getting opened. All right.
Wow, that's a high percentage.
Yes. I mean, we don't throw birthday cards or holiday cards or sympathy cards in the trash without ever even opening unless it was a complete mistake. So this methodology gets it opened in the vast majority of cases. There will always be instances where we're dealing with somebody that may not be checking their mail. Okay. They're afraid. They could be in the hospital, any number of things that they're not healthy and sane and happy and checking their mail, But when it's presented first class, so it's not lost, and human, that's important, human addressed envelope, these things are getting opened. Okay. Now, once opened, we have another opportunity to differentiate. Right.
We're going to dive into that, right?
We can dive into that.
We're going to dive in. One question, though, for you before we dive into that second part is, you and I talked about this. Like, what is that difference for you in your mind about neat handwriter versus messy handwriter?
That is, it still astounds me to this day. Some of I've had, because I help with quality control as we're assembling these and looking at them. And I've had handwriters come on board and I'm like, oh, and I'm just wincing, thinking, this just doesn't look neat, but the performance was really well. So it needs to be legible. It needs to be legible. Okay. So here is an example. Let's see here. This is,
my thoughts on the messy part too.
Yeah. So I made this for our discussion today. All right. I have horrible handwriting. I look like a neurosurgeon the way that I write,
I don't know. I'd open it.
But you would open it,
Exactly.
You would absolutely open it. And then here's another one that one of my lady scribes wrote. And we can talk a little bit about gender, gender specific styles and whatnot, but a little nicer and in cursive. I have actually had one of my handwriters, which I call scribes. It's actually a scribe, I had a request come from a client to change over because it was too neat. It looked like it was computer driven. And so we had to take Siobhan off of that one and put it over to Stan, And so It needs to be legible. We don't want to look like we're just sloppy, but we want to get opened, and it needs to be legible. So authenticity is what we're after. Authenticity, effectiveness.
Because in my mind, if I see the messier it looks, this is the psychology to me. The messier it looks, and I don't mean like scribbled, but the less neat, the
Yeah.
more I believe somebody actually wrote it,
Right.
which means that it tends to be more personal, and I'd have a higher percentage of opening the mail. Maybe that'll be a tactic eventually by Citibank or Wells Fargo. They'll have a machine that makes it look really messy or something. But you never know. Maybe that's the tactic. But there's a psychology that if I saw that, I would want to open it. And that's why I've talked about it with you, because sometimes it looks too neat. Sometimes it can look too neat, and then you're like, what is that machine that everybody's using? Is it just got a pin or something that's
Right.
going over and over and over?
Auto pen. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It doesn't look authentic. And like you said, it's gotta be authentic for
Yes.
somebody to open it. But how does that, now you bring it up, because we haven't even gone into part two, but because this is so interesting, Jeff, like all of the psychology to all of the mail is fascinating and valuable to investors and realtors and people that love this stuff, whether it even be for birthdays or a cow farm. I don't know, that was crazy. But gender specific styles, talk to us. What is that? How does that play a role in all of this?
Yeah. So when we want to try to match, okay, if we have an obvious, and I don't want to step into any trap, talking about gender specific, I don't want to assume anything, but if we have someone that is obviously male, and then we put an obviously female style, with bubble writing, I call it bubble writing, and dotting the I's with circles, and just kind of that they don't teach us to write that way, or at least they didn't do that to me in elementary school. In the 80s, there was a particular way to form your letters, but there you can oftentimes look and tell if the gender of who wrote this. Okay, it's not perfect, it doesn't always work, but it's just kind of a stereotype out there, and more often than not, you may be accurate with it, and so maybe women are just neater than men, for sure. But if we have an obvious male client, we want to try to match that. So what's important to us in order to run an operation is to have as close to gender neutral handwriting styles that we can find. I specifically look for women that can write like men and men that can write like a woman. It's funny, I don't have one of his here, but I showed it at the Probate conference in Jacksonville. And I said, and I put it up there, and I said, and this was written by it was a vet, it was a male veteran, and everybody just really thought that was female writing, because he writes the way he forms cursive letters the way that he was taught, back in the 50s. So, and back when they would put a ruler on your hand if you're not forming your letters correctly, So we try, just operationally, we try to be as gender neutral as we can, and that way we can, when you're running a company that's dealing with multiple clients, multiple mailings, on a daily basis, we have to, in case someone goes down, we have to sometimes, have a substitute and whatnot. So operationally, it's important to us. It all comes down to, did it get opened? Did it get read?
And who is the audience?
Understood, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's what our company does. It's not rocket science. We hold no patents. Anyone can do this at home. And we can talk about that too. Just follow some basic fundamentals on it. But
yeah, I think we should, because there's a lot of people that do this on their own. They want to do this on their own. They said, we can, I'll have the family members be the ones that are writing the letters and doing the cards and sending, and they have their whole mailing campaign. So while we're on that topic, and I was thinking about also another question for you about, like, how many times do you think you have to hit these homes in order to get the response, and what part two is, but how do you orchestrate a mailing campaign yourself if you are the one doing this? Because if you haven't noticed already of what Jeff's talking about, there's so many different intricacies and nuances when it comes to winning at the mailbox.
Right.
So you have to know these things, but how do they do it themselves?
Yeah, I'll be glad to kind of go through our recipe. I'll just raise the hood to our vehicle, and you can do this yourself. If you get worn out, then by all means, keep us in mind. That's what Marketing by Hand does, is do this for you reliably, professionally, consistently. There are things that matter and things that matter only just a little bit, right? The things that matter, make sure you have a good list. You want to meditate on your list and the message and what you're going to say. You don't have to overanalyze it. Okay, there's some things that we hear we need to avoid. I see them broken at times, and I don't see a whole lot of consequence for breaking rules. Okay, because it's a personal approach. One of those rules is refrain from sympathy to strangers. Okay, don't. And this comes out of really, frankly, Angela's team. Don't be writing people you don't know expressing your deepest condolences for their loss when you're trying to make a business deal occur. And that is what their belief through their experience is. And so most of my clients will follow that, but not all. And the ones that do express their sympathies are not calling back and saying that was a bad mistake. So I would move that more into the category of messaging things that don't matter quite as much as we thought that they did. But you want to think about it, and it's real simple, right? I want to purchase your property at, and here's why I deserve your call. You want to have that offer in there, okay? That can be a differentiator, is if this is going into probate, I can help pay your probate fees. I am linked in with an excellent expert in that area. You can have dual messaging, which I've seen be successful. A dual message says, hey, if you're not going to sell it to an investor, at least consider listing it with either myself or one of my colleagues, right? So you can hit them from both angles. But know and let it be authentic, okay? The more it matches you, the better. But it will be simple. Okay, I'm interested in purchasing your property at this. If you're interested in hearing what we have to say or what we can offer, call or email. Okay, you need your list source. So you've described what research can do to manually compile a list of family members and whatnot. There's list companies out there, Foreclosures Daily and Tangi and Angela do an outstanding job on assembling these probates. There's the other probate lead companies out there, but there will be list sources that you can go to, and you want to do it quickly. So as soon as that data is available, get your letter out within 2 to 5 days, okay? And some of our clients say, put us on a 48-hour turnaround. So as soon as that data is available, we have a letter or stack of letters generated within 48 hours and into the mail service. They're one of the first ones to arrive, and that's important. So you want to be quick, you want to be consistent. Be excellent in your data cleanup and your management. So take the time to research your yellow stickers. Take them out of your database. Don't spend a dime sending mail to a bad address, right? Organize it well into a folder and have that folder accessible. If your phone rings and someone says, yeah, this is John's sister, we got a letter, where you can quickly say, what is the mailing address, or what is the property address in question? And you can search that folder and pull up the entire file, within seconds, as opposed to, well, what's this or that, and what, and delay. It makes it fast. It sounds more professional if you're like, I see your record right now. I know exactly why I sent you that.
But something you wanted to talk about too,
yeah.
Jeff, was you can do all of this, but you have to measure your results.
Yes.
And measure the data, because you don't want to just keep doing the same thing over and over, which is insanity, and it not work. You need to be able to tweak or do trial and error when it comes to all of this stuff. So the topic of what we were going to talk about, which was measuring your marketing success, funnels and cost per lead so that you can be successful.
Yes.
How do people do this? Like, what's the best way to measure it with that database marketing?
Well, it depends on the size of the data set, right? So I want to use the appropriate tools. This gets into some common pitfalls that I see where a starting up investor, okay, a new investor to this, thinks that big marketing measurement tools are appropriate for a mailing of 50 to 500 letters, and they're not. I mean, when you take a look at it and you say, well, we've got a dozen calls, you don't need to be outsourcing a lot of this stuff to try to track and measure. When you have multiple campaigns and you want to measure maybe different geographies, you do need to set up different phone numbers and different captures. Okay, these are lead captures. So maybe a different email address. You can plug, a lot of people are using CRMs that can track this just by lead source. But for your smaller investor, you need a good phone number, and you need to take a look at the 10 calls you got out of that small set of mailing that you did, and make appropriate adjustments to variables that matter. When we're talking sample sizes that small, okay, we don't want to get bogged down in too much analysis. Is the phone ringing, okay, or is it not? And if I want to test a different message, I can. Will I see dramatic results over a message change? Likely not as dramatic as what I may be thinking. Will I see dramatic results if I mail it locally versus have marketing by hand, send it off from Waco for, postmark reasons? Likely not near what you think you're going to see. Okay, these are small things that really do not matter as much. But I do want everybody, and I instruct all of my clients, make sure you have some sort of tracking mechanism in place. If it's a large investor doing thousands of letters, they likely already have something trackable through their CRM. They'll have different email addresses, different lead capture mechanisms, different phone numbers ring. And so that's the way that I would handle that. But for your smaller investor, be patient, continue to send mail. Probate families, there's kind of a window where a lot of decisions are made, but many of these decisions drag on and on and on. And that's something I know you're very familiar with, is 9 months later, the family finally got unstuck. And you were the only investor that continued to send mail. Maybe it's only quarterly at that point, but you were sending a piece impressive enough that it got noticed and kept. It wasn't thrown out. And so there's kind of that decision-making cycle within probate families, which fascinates me as a marketer. That always fascinated me as a marketer, because typically, we just handle it differently.
Because it's a whole different world.
Oftentimes a decision by committee, in this space. And so
right.
It's not as quick as choose me as your plumber.
Right.
So there's a bunch of decision makers, and they're not entirely in communication with each other. They're not entirely in agreement on what needs to be done. They have different financial profiles, and there's spats. It gets wild, and that's what I have seen is the families, just how challenging it can be to get them all on one page to hear the pitch.
Right. To get them all to agree to what's happening in the deal. That's a great point, Jeff, when it comes to probate and how different it is. I think I was on a call either with CC, or I couldn't remember which interviewee it was, but we were talking about, or maybe it was Janet Jordan, the difference in a seller versus an heir. Because sellers own that house. The person's alive and they are going to say, yes, I really want to sell this house.
Yeah, right.
But an heir is also a seller, but the heir wasn't in that property, or maybe it was their childhood home and they had just left or they live there,
Mhm.
but there's a different dynamic and a different situation that people deal with when it comes to the probate mailers. And this will be the topic, the probate mailer system for
Yes.
you. So talk to us about how to treat mailers in probate very differently than all the other stuff, whether it's just a random seller, a house, a farm, a
Mm.
service. What tips and tricks for probate specifically have you seen as a success marketing tool that helps get the interest of the heir or heirs, or maybe gets them more on board?
Right. So the first thing I would say is to capture to the best of your ability the mailing information and names of everyone that you can find that would be relevant to this probate, right? So it's all the heirs, potential heirs. It's gosh, now I'm trying to remember all the names that you had up there as you were going through all of this, just research and look, this person may have an interest here. This person does have an interest in this. So you want to complete, it goes to list, a complete list. The next question would be, do I need a different message for each type of decision maker here? And that I don't know. I don't know. I know that something needs to be said at some point in the mailing sequence that we are aware that this is in probate or going to probate. This is a probate related opportunity, and we have specific experience in dealing with these types of transactions. Okay. Hence, I reference, my attorney friend or my willingness to pay for this. So I think, angling as kind of a subject matter expert is appropriate when you're marketing to probates. I think what I have learned, and again, I've not myself am not an investor. I've not marketed to probates myself, but I've managed handwriting mail campaigns for plenty of probate and wholesalers, targeting probates and what I hear and what I've seen is different messaging. Some of it's very simple, but then it goes into, I'm an expert in the probate matters that may be presented before you. Here's how I can help with that. So I would have, it goes back to when I was saying, meditate on your message. What is it you want to say to who? Remember that formula. Say the right things to the right person at the right time. And that will increase your chances of success. Say the wrong things to the wrong person, okay, we're destined for failure. So you want to focus your messaging there.
Great quote there, Jeff, because that's got to stick, right? That message has to stick, and it's got to be the right audience. It's got to be the right
It does.
tone.
And I'll give you an example. Okay. Again, I've learned to be careful in my assumptions when I see what a client says, here, send this out. And I'll read it. And oftentimes I'm just flat wrong. Okay. A gentleman targeting probates, and again, I don't have his permission. He's a client, so some of his competitors may be hearing this, so I'll leave his name out of it, or I'll anonymize it. But he said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to write this lengthy letter. And I thought, that's, we're going to have to kind of charge for that. It takes up to, 8 minutes to write one of those things. You'll wear out your scribe, but okay, what you got, and he addresses it to the family. Okay, that's fine. This is out of Virginia. And so it's Dear Henson family. Okay. My name is so-and-so. And I'm a former U.S. naval officer and currently a minority real estate investor seeking an opportunity to acquire your home in as-is condition, meaning I am not afraid of the current state of your home. By the way, I can even help you pay for your probate if you need some financial assistance. I can settle as fast as a title can be made clear, and it goes on and on. But it's a lengthy, and what he's doing is he focused in on his zip codes. And he said, these are predominantly minority neighborhoods, and I identify, and I'm going to position myself as someone that they can feel comfortable in doing business with. Okay. And when I first looked at that, I thought, that's a lot of, introduction. But it absolutely worked. It absolutely worked. It was a longer letter than what I thought it should have been. It worked. It was handwritten. Every word got read. He sent it. He did his research on his audience. He said the right things to the right people. Okay. And it worked well. So that's why I'm very careful when clients come and say, okay, give me a template. What's the best thing I can say here? Is I may not know, say know your audience. Who is this going to? And as long as we're sticking with the fundamentals, okay, I understand you may have a property for sale. I'm the person I want to talk, I want you to call, and here's why I want you to call me. Do those things and use your own words. And because I can't judge what's going to work or what's not until the data comes back. So that is a great example of focusing that message based on the audience. He knew where his letters were going.
Jeff, so in Florida, you have like these big cities, right? Like I'm thinking like, know your audience. What's the niche? It's almost like you have to like map it out. Like what's the niche? What's the city? What's the state? Everybody's got a different background. Everybody's got like, there's so many different things to do. Maybe it's Miami. It's a bit more Latin. If you come to Jacksonville, it's just a big city. How do you differentiate your audience message with a big city versus a really small county? For example, you'll have Jacksonville, but then you have Gainesville, which is smaller than Tampa and Jacksonville and all of these other places, or out in the middle of Putnam County, where it's a small town, big county, but small town vibe. What are the strategies for something like that? And I get the whole idea of like message, but is it really just another sit down and think about what kind of person that is there? Or is there a little bit more of a warmer message? Or I guess there's really no rhyme or reason when it comes to this. I think about it all the time about, is there a difference with that kind of person in a smaller county?
No, not that I hear about. No. And here's where I would venture or suggest that something that we take a look at, and that is the demographics typically of one of your probate letter recipients. Okay. If I had to ask you on average, Al, what age do you think a family member who's checking the mail would be as they receive this letter? What age are they? Are they millennials? Are they 20 somethings?
If I had to guess, they were probably in their 50s or 60s.
Bingo. Why? Because of average life expectancy. Okay. It's not a perfect formula, but we know that there's going to be a grouping in that age 50 to 60-year-old range. Okay. So how do 50 and 60-year-olds typically respond? What's the best way to market to them? What are many of good ways to market to them? I won't say the best. What are some good ways? They are responsive to mail. They understand cursive handwriting. They took the classes in school to learn cursive handwriting. They used to write letters. Okay. So that demographic responds really, really well to handwritten mail. That's, I think, how we stumbled across REI, real estate investors, crossed over kind of from insurance, where very specifically you can target someone turning age 65 next year. And demographically, we're talking about senior marketing. So in senior marketing, handwritten mail is a dynamite method if you're going to do something through the mail. But 55-year-olds, 60-year-olds are not quite as adept as our younger generations at responding to Facebook advertising, for example, any of your social media stuff. They tend to not be thumbing through Instagram. So that's why it all goes down to the age of your audience, right?
I thought of something pretty new and innovative, and I don't know maybe if you are doing this, or I don't know how it applies to your business at all, but with the whole factor of how things, even in 2020 with all COVID, I don't know if this is something where you can develop like a mail thing in email, right? So like people, I don't know if emailing campaigns are also a thing, but let's say in an email campaign in the inbox in the message comes up an envelope almost
Mhm.
like you're mailing it to their mailbox, and something they can actually open, and then maybe in there is like a video, or maybe there is like a little message or something. I don't know why that's coming to my mind
Oh,
about, you know what I mean? I don't know why
yeah,
that's hitting me right now. It's like an innovative, like strategy to what you do that
yeah.
could be a software system. I don't know.
That's maybe the next best thing. Maybe I don't know. I like it. I like it.
See, there we go. Maybe you got
Um,
to come up with that software. And you can,
yeah.
and they can open it, because the thing is as long as like the email doesn't come through where you have to click that box of now allow pop-ups, like it's something that naturally you click the message and there's an envelope,
Mhm.
right? It's very different, but you can open it, and then you can have a message video or something like that. There's just so many creative
Oh
ways
yeah.
you can do it now.
Oh, absolutely. Ever since the American Marketing Association came out with some results of a study many years ago, I don't even know when it was, but they said, look, if you can get your message in front of your audience member and do it 3 times in 3 different ways, your chances of conversion astronomically go up. And so back then, I'm dating myself a little bit, but in the 80s and 90s, particularly the 90s, and when I was going into marketing, those were, at that time, it was phone, it face to face, and mail. Okay. And so it's kind of evolved, and now email is part of it. Text. So it could be phone, text, and email. But 3 different approaches using 3 different mediums seems to really increase someone's propensity to respond. So in any type of marketing strategy, you don't want to simply rely only on direct mail. You don't want to only rely on telemarketing or SMS campaigns or Facebook campaigns. You want to diversify it. And because if it's generating results and it's profitable, you don't want to phase it out. And you can optimize your profits, but your typical investor profitability is still good. So you keep it open, right? And so I don't know exactly. I may be completely going off. Losing my train of thought again. I aged myself, right? I dated myself. But yeah, it's a multimodal campaign is what you want to try to do. Let mail be part of it. One pitfall that I see with younger investors, younger wholesalers, is they tend to think, well, my audience, I respond to text and Facebook, so probably my audience, how would I market myself, right? Well, that's usually not your audience. And I think that's part of why we've been successful in this probate space, is because of the typical age of the person opening the envelope, and they see, this is written well. Someone took the time. They did their research. I'm impressed. It's even written in cursive. Generationally, this person may be in my generation, right?
It's
I
funny,
identify.
when you said biggest pitfall, one of my signature questions on all my shows now is biggest deal killers to their deals.
Mhm.
And instead you phrased it even for you, because it's not really a deal killer for you, but the biggest pitfalls you see for these investors and the realtors are the inability to really think about the audience is that pitfall for you. And there's so many answers actually I get from that question about biggest deal killers, whether it's appraiser, whether it's the title, whether it's the lender, but then you're just a unique aspect to all of this in your you can't even get the lead unless you do the marketing, and you are the marketing whole system, Jeff. Like your whole company is the marketing by hand system, where you're specialized into psychologically getting inside the audience for that seller. And we've had discussions about this so many times.
Yeah.
Who is it? What is it? How are they? Who are they? And it's just so many different ways in and out of this whole system. So is there any other things that we really need to know when it comes to this mailing campaign system? If there's anything we left off, I want to make sure you cover it.
Oh, yeah. We went through and we talked about how people handled their mail, right? And how this is, is for the cost, this is a great way to do it, right? Because of our open rates and our red rates. Okay. We talked a little bit about variables that matter and variables that don't matter. Here's what matters, right? Timeliness, deliverability, send stuff that gets delivered. Okay, so first class. Variancy, you want to vary your approaches and be consistent and repetitive into the future. You want to say the right things to the right people at the right time. It needs to be legible. It needs to be a clear message and relevant, and stand out against your competitors. Your competitors are sending postcards, okay? So if you think your competitors are sending postcards, and your audience receives 10 postcards, then be the only one that did this. Because as a decision is made, let's check and see what we can get. We got a bunch of stuff from investors. Grab one of those postcards and, oh yeah, grab that. And let's call and see what they can offer. And then there's stuff that doesn't matter as much in my experience of doing this, and that's male versus female. It's the postmark matters a little, but not much. Coming from a company or a person, hey, vary it. Color of stationery, size of stationery, color of ink. We do think color is good, but does red do better than blue? Dude, you're sending out 100 letters.
As you're saying that, Jeff, I'm thinking about the title of this whole episode, and I think it's called like Dissecting the Science of Mail Marketing Campaigns.
Once we get open, and we're 95% of the way there with the first class stamp and a human hand addressed envelope. Okay, that's as far as we need to take it for right now. We can try to fight and get it to 97, but 95% is really, really good. And avoid, I do want to say, avoid pitfalls of, and I've seen certain clients do this, trying to save a nickel, but it really cheapens the approach. And so you got to ask yourself, what is the true opportunity cost if you send out something, and to save a nickel, or even save $1 or save $100 if it ended up costing you 10,000 an opportunity, then don't do it,
This is all so valuable for them out there, Jeff.
Right. And that's what I have learned is a lot of investors come and they say, this is kind of my first go round at it. And, I'm a plumber on the side, for example, and help me out. I really enjoy those types of clients. And I always want to be careful that they don't get too bogged down in big marketing tools to small data samples. If we could trim 1% here, hey, we're just trying to get your phone to ring right now. So, out of these 10 letters, let's get a call, and then we can start applying the other stuff. Expectations are important too. See a lot of investors, I've got a couple $100 and by golly, we're going to make $5,000. Let's give it a go. There's, and it happens. It does happen. So we want to be good with our as sound in our expectations as we can. But a very large investor one time told me, and this is dated information, it's several years ago, but he's like, here's what I do know. For every $2,000 that I pump into marketing, I buy a house. Now I may turn that into a 10 or 20K opportunity, but I have about a 10% allowable cost per sale, or allowable cost per deal. Okay. If I make 10 grand on it, I wanted to see if I could keep my marketing cost under 1,000, or else it never would have happened. So to have reasonable expectations around that, around your marketing cost of getting that deal done. And, but yeah, if you're going to do this yourself, you absolutely can. Many of our clients, they come from one of two different places. Either A, they have tried postcards and were not happy with the results, or B, they are doing handwritten stuff themselves and they're worn out and they could not keep it they consistently and professionally done on a timeline. And so that's what our company does, is help. We're an outsourceable option for that. You know, we're here in Texas, we're domestic, and the people, the scribes on the team, they are mature people that are citizens right here, you know, in Central Texas. And that way we're never waiting on mail international shipment from Zimbabwe, you know, so we could save a nickel. So we're reliable. Yeah.
And you know, something else we have talked about too before, Jeff, is the importance of when you get these mailers, you mail it from your local office, your mail office, not something from like, you know, having a service mail it from Texas or a service mail it from Wisconsin. Is the importance of that on that envelope that it says where it was mailed from. Because if it has an out-of-state address, it could be like, is this spam mail? Is this scam mail? There's a science to even that as well.
We like that to match. It's one of those things that, in my experience, it matters, but not as much as we thought. Not as much as we thought, but it's nice to be consistent, right? If you're going to have a Jacksonville, Florida return address on that envelope, it's nice to have a Florida postmark, okay? But it becomes one of those nice to haves and a consistency thing. But in actuality, we've not seen it really break anybody if it's mailed from somewhere else. It needs to be domestic. So, you know, I kind of had a hypothesis there as we were doing some testing a couple years ago, and that this was really important. And back then we shipped everything. You know, if you're in North Carolina, we're going to ship it to you. Give it to your mailman. What we found was more important on probates is exactly what I'm going to tell you. Timeliness is more important than postmark. The 2 to 3 days waiting on a package to come to get a local postmark caused more harm than sending it from Texas, okay, because of the delay. And so that is something that you have to look at. When we're talking about large scale stuff, you know, the rules may be different, but it's better to be early than have a local postmark. That's what we found. That's what we found. And it surprised me a little bit.
That surprises me because we talked about that before, and there was a whole thing to that.
Yeah, it matters less than what we thought we were seeing a couple years ago. It matters less. So, which basically tells me people are paying a little less attention to that postmark than what I thought they were. Okay, as long as it's there, they're not really drilling in to see the date and the post office it came from. There's just kind of a visual appearance of a canceled stamp.
Right.
Which we all relate to. Oh, it's first class.
Right.
So that's kind of an interesting development.
Well, this is all great, Jeff. All of what you have said during this whole time has been tips and tricks and nuances. And like I said, I came up with the title of of this episode, Dissecting the Science of Direct Mail Marketing, because that's what you have done. That's what this is. It comes down to a science, a formula, chemistry about what you do and how you do it and what you've learned and you've researched and you've looked at the association of marketing or all of these complex things and little things that people overlook that are the actual basis for why there is a science to this and what it is. Just like how you get business and follow up and consistency. It's not rocket science. They're typical formulas that everybody should use, but everybody overlooks it and just moves on from those simple tactics.
The fundamentals.
Yeah, fundamentals. So for everybody out there that is interested in Jeff Rhodes' Marketing by Hand, Jeff, please tell everybody where they can find you, who you are looking for to reach out to you. please give your website, your Facebook, anything, so they can at least get a hold of you when they're ready to do these mail marketing campaigns after they realize that orchestrating a whole mail marketing campaign by themselves isn't really going to be the way to go, because they need somebody like Jeff. Let it go.
Thank you. Yeah, Al, thank you so very much. I enjoyed this. Thank you. It was very informative to me. I learned quite a bit from you. And thank you for your help to me over the years. You know, you've taught me a lot. We can be found at marketingbyhand.com. Okay, marketingbyhand.com. Shoot me, either call the number on the website or send me a note through the contact me form. We are a boutique outfit. I talk to all of my clients, and so no one hires us to do their mailings without talking to me. And we can also be found on Facebook at facebook.com/marketingbyhand. Yeah.
Fantastic way to get you.
Pretty easy. Marketing by hand.
And they can message you, they can call you, and we'll make sure we have that info on the YouTube channel, the iTunes account, all the whole podcast and all the handles. But, you know, I remember you even saying you love the investors, or that's a huge area because it relates to real estate. They're all doing their whole marketing campaign. So again, anybody that really has been thinking about doing a new dynamic way of their whole system and their whole mailing, what better way than to talk to Jeff, who is the guy that formulates all of this and has the science. And Jeff, I can't wait until we do another boot camp again. I know you and I both can agree it won't be 5 hours next time. That was my fault. There's no way it's going to be 5 hours. I've learned that I'll just do 40 minutes and let us all go up there and have a shebang and it's done. I can't wait until that next time we're all back and we can do that with Angela, the Foreclosures Daily, and just have that trio up there of all of these little things that people don't think about that you'd have to think about if you want to do all the probates, the real estate, whatever it is. So I would just tell you, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show and coming on to talk with me, spending the afternoon on this Friday, really breaking down a lot of these things that we need to know or didn't have to know about that whole, you didn't have to mail it from that mailbox locally. Can't believe that doesn't really matter anymore.
Well, it doesn't matter as much as we thought, right? As we
thought. Okay, that's the way we phrase it.
The feedback that I've gotten from customers. But yeah, very interesting stuff. It's just do the fundamentals. Just do it. You just want to do it, you know, and do it well. So.
And you heard it right there first. So Jeff, thanks again. And when I have my studio, don't you worry, I'll be letting you know. And you either have to fly in, or when the boot camp's happens, I'll have you in the studio and we'll record one right then and there. And we'll do it. We'll dive deeper. We'll find out more statistics. Maybe all of a sudden we'll find out there's a new stat because of COVID no, you know what? You'll have your new email marketing that we were the new system. So Jeff, thanks again. Really had so much fun with you on this show today.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much, Al. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
All right, Jeff, take care. All right, everybody, if you want more content like this, make sure you check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel or my Facebook at Al Nicoletti, where I'm going to be having all of these podcast sessions, including this one with Jeff Rhodes that'll be called Dissecting the Science of Direct Mail Marketing with Jeff Rhodes, and all of the good podcasts that I've had, great people that I've had on the show. So make sure you check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel, the Facebook page, and I will see you next time on the Al Nicoletti Show. Take care.